For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee do now rise.
The question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
All the way down here, sir. Okay, sir, all the way down to the spot. Just turn face, and he will recognize you.
Mr. Chairman, Chair of the Committee of the Whole.
You can read that, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 7148, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
Please, sir.
Chair of the Committee of the Whole, House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 7148 and has come to no resolution thereon. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 1014, I call up the bill H.R. 7147, the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act 2026, and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7147, a bill making further consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for the purposes.
Pursuant to the House Resolution 1014, the amendment specified in Section 7 of House Resolution 1014 is adopted, and the bill, as amended, is considered read. The bill, as amended, shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, and the gentleman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the measure under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 7147, the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act. This bill marks the final measure of our FY26 agenda. Our work here is about one of the most important duties, keeping the American people and our homeland safe. This legislation delivers just that and upholds the America First agenda through supporting Border Patrol and enforcement agents, detention and deportation efforts, cutting-edge technology to detect illicit activity, and Coast Guard investments to counter Communist China's aggression in the maritime sphere. We enhance resources to combat fentanyl and other deadly drugs while safeguarding children through expanded investigation into human trafficking and forced labor. From our borders and ports to aviation and cyberspace, this legislation delivers the personnel, training, and technology needed to reinforce our defenses and confront those who wish us harm. It also prioritizes strong and resilient communities by bolstering disaster preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. Subcommittee Chairman Mark Amodei prioritized safety at every level. Even in the face of political challenge, he and the ranking member, Mr. Cuellar of Texas, worked together to produce a serious, responsible bill. H.R. 7147 is focused on outcomes, not partisan rhetoric. It equips frontline personnel, strengthens enforcement, and provides the certainty the Department of DHS, needs to carry out its mission effectively. I thank our members and staff for their work, and I urge support for this bipartisan legislation. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
From Oklahoma reserves, gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself 4 minutes.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I want to begin by thanking Ranking Member Cuellar for his work on this bill. He is a tough negotiator, and this bill is better for his efforts. I also want to say a thank you to the committee staff, in particular Shannon McCulley, Jamie Wise, and Jim Ellsworth. They spent many long hours, a lot of sleepless nights fighting to make this bill as good as it could be. The Homeland Security funding bill before us today has gotten a lot of attention over the past few days, and rightfully so. It deals with funding ICE, an agency that has shown itself to be lawless, vindictive, aggressive, cruel, and thus far unaccountable, both to Congress and the American people. That is not all that the Homeland Bill deals with, however, and before I return to the topic of ICE and its funding, I want to share some of what else is contained in this bill. This bill rejects President Trump and Secretary Noem's attempt to eliminate FEMA, increasing funding for the agency by over $870 million, in addition to providing more than $26 billion for the Disaster Relief Fund. It increases funding for TSA by $149 million and provides a pay raise for air traffic controllers and uniformed members of the United States Coast Guard. This is important funding, and I am glad that these provisions, which we fought for, were included in the bill. The final product, though, far from perfect, is better because of it. Despite these inclusions and others, it is impossible to ignore the impact that ICE's conduct had on completing this bill. ICE has operated with brutality, terrorizing our constituents, abducting our neighbors, and violently assaulting lawful residents who have done nothing but had the misfortune of crossing ICE's path on their way home from work. Unfortunately, this month, we saw how this unchecked lawlessness can have fatal consequences with the killing of Renee Nicole Good. This is a rogue agency. Substantial constraints must be placed on it. During negotiations, we proposed such constraints, but our Republican colleagues refused to include almost all of them. We sought to prevent any funds from being used to detain or deport U.S. citizens. Common sense. They refused to commit to that. We proposed prohibiting interior enforcement by non-ICE personnel, like the Border Patrol. That was rejected as well. We put forward a provision to ensure members of Congress can continue to conduct our lawful oversight of all ICE facilities uninhibited. That, too, was deemed unacceptable. Democrats did win some battles in this bill, however. Under this bill, we reduce ICE's enforcement and removal operations budget by $115 million. We reduce their detention capacity, providing funding that can only be used for body-worn cameras, and increase funding for the Office of the Inspector General, specifically for oversight of ICE detention facilities. These are good provisions, and I am glad they are in this bill. But it's clear that more must be done. ICE believes it can act with impunity and is behaving accordingly. I trust that my colleagues have taken the time to review what is contained in this bill and have determined for themselves what is best for their constituents and their communities. I have made my own determination, and that determination leads me to a no vote on this bill. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 6 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Nevada and chairman of the Subcommittee on Homeland Security of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Amadei.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of the Homeland Security bill under consideration. As the chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee, I'd like to thank the full committee chair, Mr. Cole, my colleague from Oklahoma, for his leadership in helping to return us to regular order and producing a series of bills that will fully fund the government by the January 30th deadline. But I'd also like to thank my colleague from Connecticut, the ranking member, Rosa DeLauro, who was part of this combination. You've seen him work before in years past both as the chairman of the full committee and as folks on other subcommittees that have worked well. It's been a help to all of us, and I want to thank you all publicly for your professionalism and your respect for each other and our process. I would also like to thank my good friend, subcommittee ranking member, Mr. Cuellar, a real pro and somebody who has, we don't agree all the time, but it's like it's never been a disagreeable experience. And there are days around this outfit when, quite frankly, that isn't the case. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. You've been a great partner. And finally, I'd like to take the time to thank the committee staff on both sides of the aisle who worked tirelessly over the past month to negotiate the product before us. From the majority side, Paul Anstein, Anna Lanier Fisher, Fern Gibbons, Alessandra Ramirez, Ashley Trulick, and Nkosi Thomas. And from the minority, Shannon McCauley, Jamie Wise, and Jim Ellsworth. It's not cool to be on appropriations during the last 30 days for sure, and you folks were real troopers and professionals and class acts. I want to thank you all for your dedication and effort. I also want to remind everybody, because we get tied up in a lot of stuff, essentially, the Homeland Bill is the Coast Guard, FEMA, TSA, Secret Service, Border Patrol, and ICE. Now, there's other parts in there, but that's the majority of what you're talking about when you go, well, Homeland, what's that? That's the agencies that take up the lion's share of this sort of stuff. As the chairman, we'd like to basically think that what we produced, having those meetings, talking across the aisle and with our staffs, what we produced is a bedrock model for going forward and getting us out of the continuing resolution rut. Continuing resolutions lock us into spending levels that are both outdated and have not evolved, like, frankly, the positions on both sides. So, the fiscal year 2026 Homeland Bill under consideration today furthers this administration's goals of undoing the damage caused by the previous administration, starting with the border. This funds the President's priorities, codifies reductions in efficiencies, and operationalizes border security and immigration enforcement investments in the reconciliation process. I also want to note that we have, let's start with ICE. And I know people have lamented that, boy, you know, we didn't really get everything we wanted and all that stuff. It's like, guess what? There's something that we should both be celebrating here today, and it's about ICE. Because the last administration wasn't real big on ICE, kind of maybe hoped they didn't exist or whatever, one of the things that didn't happen with respect to ICE, like all other law enforcement agencies around, was the use and implementation of body cameras. So you don't have to rely on somebody happen to have their cell phone and have a good angle, whether they're accusing or defending themselves for whatever they did. This bill funds body cameras for ICE personnel so that we can have first person, if you will, access to what people really think was done. You like a pay raise for the Coast Guard? This bill does that. You like more infrastructure for the Coast Guard? This bill does that. You like grants for first responders and for nonprofit religious worship institutions? This bill does that. The foundation is undeniable. So, as the tax on houses of worship has increased over the last few years, we're providing more money for that. Finally, we ensure that CISA, the agency that's charged with protecting our critical infrastructure like power and water, have the resources required to prevent attacks from nation-state adversaries like China and Russia. Simply put, this bill ensures that the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security who work tirelessly to keep America safe have the resources and tools they need to protect this great nation. I ask my colleagues to continue to support the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, the distinguished ranking member of the Homeland Security Subcommittee, Mr.
Gentleman's
Cuellar.
recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I rise in support of this bill, but first I want to thank the chairman of the committee and the full committee, and certainly my ranking member for their leadership, and certainly also to the staff on both sides for the hard work that they have provided on this difficult bill. I represent about 280 miles of the U.S.-Mexican border, and let me be the first one to say this bill is not perfect. However, this bill is better than the alternatives of either funding the department under a continuing resolution or shutting down the government. That is the choice in front of us. This bill puts real requirements to the department, provides oversights, makes targeted investments, directly helping states and local communities to make sure that we help folks like firefighters and other folks. And let me say this, It's better than the alternative, leaving the department with a blank check, virtually unchecked by the Appropriations Committee and by Congress. Allowing DHS to operate under a continuing resolution or trying to shut it down, ICE would ensure that they have no direction from Congress. This bill flat funds ICE, but at the same time, we also strengthen the oversight of ICE by increasing funding to the Inspector General by over $38 million over FY25. That includes $20 million to do additional inspections of the ICE facilities and $12.8 million to provide oversight of the department for the funds that they got under reconciliation. It also provides, as the gentleman said a few minutes ago, $20 million for body-worn cameras, specifically for CBP and ICE that are conducting immigration enforcement. And it also provides funding to increase training for CBP and ICE agents for de-escalation tactics. Let me say this, we did try to fight more. Unfortunately, we couldn't reach an agreement with our Republican friends, but we did not walk away from the work of putting oversight into law that this bill provides itself. We also provide funding, accountability to the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties and the Office of Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is, again, something that they try to close. Let me be clear. ICE can operate based on the funds that they were provided under reconciliation, but we cannot say the same thing to other departments or other agencies under DHS, especially when we talk about FEMA. FEMA gets $5.7 billion, including $3.8 billion for federal assistance, which is a 20% increase above FY25. And again, that money goes back to help firefighters, helps threats, disasters. And again, it also provides money to CISA. And as you know, there were cuts, but we are providing money there to make sure that we fight the threats to our critical infrastructure that we're seeing across. And again, finally, this provides funding in the amount of $550 million increase to the Coast Guard, because again, we got to make sure the Coast Guard gets a funding, especially when it comes to funding the drug interdiction. So again, I'll say this. Is this bill perfect? No. But a continuing resolution does provide no oversight, and the department also ICE gets a funding from the reconciliation. So, Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is simple. This bill is better than the alternative. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves.
Reserve. Good job.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal year 2026 Homeland Security Appropriations Bill is the culmination of the hard work of our committee and our staff and provides critical investments to protect the American homeland. As a member of the Subcommittee on Homeland Security, I know that this bill champions public safety and preparedness. It protects taxpayer dollars and refocuses the department on its core functions. With border encounters at an historic low, this legislation fully funds DHS and the effort to detain and remove violent illegal immigrants from our communities. In Central Washington, we know firsthand the important work done by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This bill increases FEMA grant programs by 5% above their previous levels and restores critical staffing positions lost under the fiscal year 25 continuing resolution. It also delivers funds directly to communities across the country, including my own Yakima County, to establish a dedicated emergency operations center and ensure timely and well-coordinated emergency response efforts. The U.S. Coast Guard is fundamental in protecting our border and domestic security. This bill boosts funding for the Coast Guard and provides funding to counter China's footprint in the Indo-Pacific. Lastly, as a member of the Select Committee on the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, I am pleased to see this bill refocuses the Cyber and Infrastructure Agency, or CISA, on its core cybersecurity mission and right-sizes the agency to preserve critical functions. This includes funding to counter threats from adversarial nations and ensure critical infrastructure systems are protected from these threats. Mr. Speaker, this Homeland Security bill is the last piece in completing 12 fiscally responsible bipartisan spending bills. It is the testament
Gentleman's time's expired.
Additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
It is a testament to the hard work of the committee and subcommittee leadership on both sides of the aisle and the dedicated staff that spent an untold amount of time to make this process work. I encourage all my colleagues on both sides to support this negotiated bill that provides the resources necessary to secure our borders, protect Americans here at home, and ensure we are being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Home reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the distinguished Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, today is not about ICE funding. Republicans already gave ICE $75 billion. Today is about the fact that we have a mass paramilitary force terrorizing our communities. Republicans had the opportunity in this bill to enact common sense checks on ICE operations. They refused. First, they refused to ensure ICE abides by the same laws and procedures as our local and state police, that they're unmasked when on duty, that they actually wear the body cameras, that they wear a nameplate identifying who they are, and that they are held responsible for excessive force. Second, the GOP refused to join us in upholding the Constitution. Not only are these arrests warrantless, ICE has now determined they have the right to search your home without a judicial warrant. That is illegal and it is unconstitutional. Third, they refuse to make sure that the use of deadly force is always thoroughly investigated. When Renee Good was shot to death, Kristi Noem declared her a domestic terrorist within hours. The only investigation Noem was interested in was an investigation into Renee Good's widow. That is not justice. That is not security for the American people. Fourth, Republicans refuse to agree to the simple concept that American citizens should not be detained and deported, that people going about their business should not be kidnapped because of the color of their skin or because they're engaging in peaceful protests. Finally, Republicans refuse to prioritize the very real work that DHS does in our communities, stopping fentanyl trafficking, stopping child trafficking, stopping cartels. DHS is taking those investigators off of those cases and putting them on ICE raids. It is at the expense of our national security. When the GOP can't even agree to common sense guardrails, it is clear this isn't about immigration, this isn't about security, this is about state-sanctioned terror. This is about the political retribution of a vengeful president. I will not rubber stamp the federal government's use of political violence against its own people, and I am asking every member to join me in voting no. I yield back.
Gentlelady reserves from Connecticut. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend and former law enforcement official and sheriff, the distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rutherford.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise in support of the fiscal year 2026 Homeland Security Appropriations Act and urge my colleagues to do the same. This bill champions public safety, and it refocuses the Department of Homeland Security back on its fundamental mission that was really lost sight of during the Biden administration. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, provides funding to important agencies to defend the nation against the threat posed by terrorists, criminals, and foreign adversaries. It aligns with President Trump's agenda to close our border, supports local, state, and federal law enforcement officers that are deporting dangerous criminal aliens out of our communities. Mr. Speaker, this bill gives TSA the resources to keep the flying public safe while getting rid of waste programs like Viper. It supports CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is securing vital infrastructure from adversaries like China. It also provides FEMA with the resources it needs to support communities following disasters, and it invests in the Coast Guard, who is keeping fentanyl and other dangerous drugs off our shores and out of our communities. This bill, Mr. Speaker, puts America first. It protects Americans and secures our homeland. And I urge all my colleagues to vote yes on this bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, the distinguished ranking member of the Defense Subcommittee, Ms. McCollum.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to this bill. This year, Minnesota has witnessed a state of unbelievable violence, which has led to chaos and terror in the hands of President Trump and DHS. Minnesotans are being racially profiled on a mass scale, assaulted on our streets, kidnapped from our communities. And just the other day, a 5-year-old child was used as bait to get members of his household to come out so masked people in front of this 5-year-old could handcuff and carry family members away. Masked federal agents are seizing parents, yes, in front of terrified children. And many of these people we're finding had no record and were here legally. American citizens and permanent residents are snatched from their cars and they're taken to detention centers. And I worked on one case this past weekend. It's cold. She was warming up her car. She was taken out of her car. She was taken to Whipple, then she was taken to Sherburne County, and then back to Whipple again. Oh, and in between, she had to go to the hospital because of a head injury. And her arms, her wrists, might be suffering permanent damage. A citizen, mind you. This is the worst case of mass civil rights violations by the federal government in recent history. 2 weeks ago, Minnesota stood up to call out these illegal abuses by mass federal agents, and a citizen, a mother of 3 in Minneapolis, Renee Good, was shot and killed. It's happening right here, right now, in Minnesota, in the United States of America, and it needs to stop now. Not 1 penny of our taxpayers' dollars should go to DHS. While our constitutional rights are being violated.
Gentlelady's time's expired.
I yield an additional 30
Let me just say in that 30 seconds, vote no. Vote for our constitutional rights. Vote for due process. Vote no on this bill.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Missouri and the Vice Chair of the Military Construction VA Subcommittee, the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Alford.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, this moment matters. For too long, we here in Washington have governed by crisis. We've rushed pre-holiday omnibuses, backroom deals, and broken promises. Mr. Speaker, those days are over. Today, following President Trump's America First agenda, along with Chairman Tom Cole's unmatched leadership, we are doing what the American people sent us here to Washington, D.C. to do, to put America first. 12 out of 12 appropriation bills, including Homeland Security today, transparent bills, accountable bills, and fiscally responsible bills. This hadn't happened in years, and it sends a clear, powerful message back home. The House is back at work. We are back to governing. These bills, strengthen our military, secure our border, invest in health and workforce readiness, modernize transportation, and deliver real savings for taxpayers. It is peace through strength. This Homeland bill makes us safer at home by deporting illegal criminal aliens. In the overall bills, through our member-directed investments, we are expanding Skyhaven Airport to improve safety and grow aviation training at the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. We're launching a workforce training center for ag in Sedalia to prepare the next generation. We're replacing a failing bridge so first responders, school buses, and commerce can move safely and reliably in Oak Grove, Missouri. These are reasonable member-directed investments in America, our true Article I authority. Mr. Speaker, we're just inches away from the finish line. Let's not slow this down. Let's get over the finish line. Let's deliver now for what the American people sent us here to do. Donald J. Trump's America First agenda, backed by 12 appropriation bills, passed out of this House, signed by the President. Let's fund our government. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, the distinguished ranking member of the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee, Ms. Frankel.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this Homeland Security funding bill. We cannot continue to fund an agency that ignores the Constitution, abandons due process, interrupts businesses, and traumatizes families. Across the country, ICE enforcement is no longer about public safety. It has become a campaign of cruelty and fear, families torn apart with no warning and no plan, children afraid to go to school, homes entered without warrants, workers dragged off of job sites by their hair, people abducted by when shopping for groceries, going to the church, or taking their kids to school, peaceful citizens pepper sprayed and shot in cold blood for daring to speak up. And when members of Congress try to conduct oversight, we are blocked. We are denied access. We are told to look the other way. This is not law enforcement. This is not accountability. And that is not who we are as a country. This bill writes a check for an agency that is violating basic rights or refusing basic oversight. It pours money into detention and enforcement without guardrails, without transparency, without respect for human dignity. And I want to be clear. Security does not require cruelty. Enforcement does not require lawlessness. And immigration policy should never require us to abandon our values. Yes, we need border security and orderly immigration system, but we can secure our borders and uphold due process, and we can enforce the law and protect families. And this bill does neither. And until the Trump administration ends these abuses, restores transparency, and respects the Constitution, I cannot and will not support funding that enables this harm. And I yield back.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished gentlelady from North Dakota, Ms. Fedorchak.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I want to commend Chairman Tom Cole for leading the appropriations process as intended by our founders. Fiscal year 26 will mark the first time in decades that Congress has funded the federal government through all 12 appropriations bills without reverting to a year-long continuing resolution. As a freshman, I committed to working to this process, to this end, during my time in Congress. I never dreamed I would see it my first year. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for your leadership. Now I rise today on behalf of North Dakota farmers and rural communities to support the step included in this measure to move forward on year-round E-15. Farmers are hurting. Across the country, input costs and interest costs are up. Our producers are also dealing with tariff pressures and shifting markets. And at the same time, commodity prices are down. That's a difficult combination for anyone. And the future of many family farmers hangs in the balance both in my state and many others throughout the heartland. Year-round E-15 offers immediate relief without costing the federal government anything. This is a top priority for farmers in my state and across our nation. E-15 provides an immediate, strong domestic market for their bountiful harvest. E15 is homegrown energy. Year-round E15 eliminates regulatory uncertainty that prevents the industry from flourishing. It will add $25.3 billion to the U.S. GDP and support more than 128,000 full-time jobs. President Trump and Secretary Rollins support this effort. Rural America is counting on us to deliver. Please join me and let's get this done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, a member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. Escobar.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, as a member of the House Homeland Appropriations Subcommittee, I stand today in opposition to this Homeland Appropriations bill. I want to be very clear. The bill that passed out of committee had protections for U.S. citizens against what we are seeing playing out in Minnesota and other American cities. During our debate in the House Appropriations Committee, I successfully amended the bill to include language that would prevent ICE from apprehending and deporting U.S. citizens. When the bill was reported out of committee, it included my amendment. But during negotiations, I was told that the White House, Stephen Miller in particular, stripped my amendment from the bill. This means Donald Trump does not want to protect U.S. citizens. Let that sink in. Donald Trump does not want U.S. citizens protected from being detained and deported by ICE. The Trump agenda has never been about apprehending and deporting the worst of the worst. Their own statistics prove that. The stories reported by journalists on the ground prove that. Eyewitness and firsthand accounts prove that. U.S. citizens, alongside lawful immigrants and members of vibrant communities, including children as young as 5 years old, are being targeted by ICE and Border Patrol in the kinds of abuses many of us never believed would happen in America. Indiscriminate stops on the streets, racial profiling, people dragged from their cars and their homes, legal observers physically assaulted for documenting abuses, theft and destruction of property, and people being killed by agents. Violations of law, violations of the Constitution, and violations of civil rights are happening here in America at the hands of the American government, specifically the Department of Homeland Security. This cannot stand. I urge all of my colleagues to vote no.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the distinguished ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Mr. Takano.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in vehement opposition to giving one more red cent to ICE and CPB until we see accountability and reforms in this DHS funding bill. Under Secretary Noem's and President Trump's action, ICE and CPB have turned law enforcement agencies into something much more dark, much more sinister. Americans are scared by masked agents roaming our streets, arresting anyone in eyesight who they deem to be a threat, not a court of law. They are terrified that they could be the next Renee Good or one of the many who have died in for-profit detention camps. And they worry about sending their kids to school or doing right by the law and attending routine immigration hearings. It cannot continue, and today Congress has a chance to act. Now I understand that there are some decent parts to this bill unrelated to ICE or the CPB. But giving more taxpayer dollars to this fund to fund this wave of violence without accountability for past abuses and reforms to prevent more tragedies is not just a mistake, it is complicity. Instead, we need courage to demand guardrails that every single American can support. When there is a shooting or another abuse, an independent investigation should be the standard. When ICE kicks down your door, a warrant must be signed by a judge, and that warrant needs to be present. And if you're speaking Spanish or have skin color that's other than white, you should not be detained just because of how you look or the language you speak. And should you encounter an immigration officer, they should no longer be able to shield themselves from accountability behind a mask. And in the United States of America, nobody should feel like they have to carry a passport in their own country to prove that they're a citizen or a legal permanent resident. No American should be made, Mr. Speaker, to carry a passport in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this legislation because I cannot in good conscience vote to spend 1 more cent on ICE. I will not fund an agency that acts like an American Gestapo. The Trump administration has launched a brutal and reckless campaign to strike fear in immigrant communities across the country, and ICE is on the front lines, using aggressive and violent tactics that too often end in tragedy. I cannot support 1 more cent for an agency that would recklessly take the life of Renee Good, an innocent and defenseless young woman. I cannot support 1 more cent for masked agents arresting U.S. citizens, pulling people out of their homes and tearing children away from their parents, and stating it is exempt from the constitutional requirement for search warrants. I cannot support 1 more cent for detention facilities with the highest death rate in decades and that fail to meet the basic medical needs of detainees. No wonder they refuse to allow access to members of Congress. To support 1 more cent for an agency with such disregard for the rule of law and basic human decency would be a moral outrage. Vote no on this legislation.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Yes, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Yesterday, at this time, Liam Ramos was at his preschool in Minneapolis. And today, as we speak, he is in a prison cell in Texas against the will of his parents. What are we doing here? I'm a member of the Committee of Homeland Security, and under the Biden administration, I pushed for more resources to secure the border. I know that we need to enforce immigration laws, but not like this. They are sending masked agents into American neighborhoods. They are beating people in the streets. They are breaking into homes without a judicial warrant, profiling people based on their appearance or their accent, and detaining them if they don't have their citizenship papers on them. Is this what we've become? A country where everyone has to carry their citizenship papers around in case masked men come and threaten to beat them and detain them and throw them into a vehicle? Is that what we've become? By the Department of Homeland Security's own data, the vast majority of the people who they have detained have no criminal record at all. They are detaining and deporting U.S. military veterans, children with cancer, pregnant women. We don't have to do it like this. We can enforce immigration laws without this level of cruelty. And now they're asking us to give them a blank check to continue funding this. We as a Congress need to start doing our jobs and put common sense guardrails in place. I urge my colleagues, vote no on this bill until there are real guardrails in the way that DHS is behaving. And I yield back.
Gentlelady from Connecticut reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Reserve.
Gentlelady reserves.
I'd advise the gentlelady I'm prepared to close whenever she is.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady is recognized. Connecticut is recognized.
Sorry. I understand. Okay. I thank the gentleman. There was an additional speaker who was not here. As I said in my opening, this is a bill that has gotten so much attention over the past few days. And I think that that is the reality of where we are. I've watched this bill over the years, and it's always been a struggle to deal with the Homeland Security bill. And I thought that we were really on track to be able this time around to make some significant progress on the Homeland Security bill. And we were on track to do that. But then we watched unfold an unspeakable tragedy in Minnesota. Unspeakable in the loss of a young woman who was killed. You've heard from my colleagues from Minnesota, not just about the killing of Renee Nicole Good, but of the other unspeakable transgressions by an agency that has made a determination that they are not accountable to anyone, to no laws, no rule of law, no even higher calling of understanding how you treat human beings. They have run roughshod over United States citizens. No one here believes that criminals in this nation should be deported, or that they should face the legal system that we have, because the strength of the United States is that we are a nation of laws. We abide by the rule of law. And this agency is defining this at every step of the way, every day, with the sanction of the President of the United States, saying we are going to work to increase the pain. We are going to detain and potentially deport United States citizens. We asked for some simple reforms. Don't deport United States citizens. Require the training and the hiring of personnel that are competent and capable for this job. Do you know that training has gone from 5 to 8 months to 6 to 8 weeks? The sensitivity around this issue has been broken, and the trust of the American people and the people of Minnesota has been broken. Children are frightened, families are frightened, and there's no need for that in this country. We need to have the rule of law reinstated. And you can't have masked, armed people on the street pulling over anyone that they choose to based on the color of their skin, of how they look. You know, I said this in the Rules Committee when I testified. I actually have 2 grandsons who are adopted. I have one from Guatemala, and yeah, he is brown-skinned, but he's a citizen. He lives in Los Angeles. And I found myself telling him, make sure you carry your passport. Make sure you carry your passport. Because it scares me that because of his brown skin, he can be pulled aside, and he can be detained, and he can be deported. And he's a United States citizen. My other grandson, his parentage is Uzbekistan, but he's a United States citizen. He's a youngster. And he could be snatched up and separated from us. the United States of America. We've watched, and we focus on Iran. We watched the Savak in Iran take people off the street, detain them, kill them, never heard from them again. We're not going down that road. We cannot go down that road. The Congress cannot take us down that road. I was hopeful as a ranking member of Appropriations, and my colleague and the chair knows this, to get what we need to get done. And we were on a road. We were on a good track. But we have to face the circumstances. We have to deal with the environment. We have to deal with what's happened in this country. And we cannot turn a blind eye. We cannot say, let's overlook it. Because if we overlook it, it will not get better. It is our responsibility now to make it better so that we can turn this around, make this agency work. I'm not for abolishing ICE, and there'll be a lot of people who are going to be unhappy with my saying that, and that so be it. But we need to reform it. We need to turn it around. We need to make it work on behalf of the American people, not make it the fear that a KGB, a Savak, or other agencies have had in other countries that we oppose. And we can't go down the road of making that who we are. It is our responsibility. It is our responsibility. I've said to my colleagues, I say it over and over again, make the decision based on where your heart is and what you believe in. This is a moment and a vote that says you have to determine what you believe is the right thing to do. And that's the basis on which to do. I've made that decision. And the right thing for me to do is to vote no on this bill. I yield back.
The gentlewoman has yielded. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. I want to begin by thanking two outstanding appropriators. Mr. Amodei, the chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee of Appropriations, and his working partner and colleague, the ranking member, Mr. Cuellar of Texas. They have done an extraordinary job on this bill. We've heard a lot of rhetoric today. Not much of it has anything to do with what's in the bill. The bill itself is a good, strong bill. It's a bill for, frankly, the two members worked well together. Not a perfect bill, as my friend Mr. Cuellar said, certainly not from his perspective, but it's a solid bill. There's no poison pills in this bill. It focuses on making the American people more secure. It does so economically and efficiently, and it does so in a way that honestly should make every member of the committee proud. This is a difficult bill to bring forward, no doubt about that. Each side has struggled with it over the years. I'm very proud that the ranking member and the chairman worked together to bring a bill to the floor. That has not happened in a long, long time. Usually just sort of gets muddled in. And it says a great deal about their professionalism and their cooperation. Now, if you listened to the debate, you would think we have law enforcement in chaos and that somehow our country's not secure. Quite the opposite's true. Quite frankly, President Trump should be commended for what he and his administration have accomplished in a matter of weeks and months that most of us thought would take years. Our borders are secure. They are more secure now than they've ever been. It wasn't that long ago I was on this floor talking about 15,000 a day or 10,000 a day coming in illegally. That has stopped. And you know, as a consequence of that, crime has gone down, not up. That's a great success for the American people. Drug trafficking is down, not up. That's a great success for the American people. The scourge of human trafficking, the exploitation of usually young women and young men has been dramatically lowered. That's thanks to President Trump. the people that he's put in charge of our border security and our internal security, the hard work of our Coast Guard. You know, there's a lot in this bill that has nothing to do with ICE. We fund the Border Patrol here. Are we supposed to not pay those men and women that have kept us secure? We fund the Coast Guard, which, as my friends point out, and the distinguished chair of this committee pointed out, has been refocused on some of the maritime security issues, particularly relating to foreign adversaries as far away as China. This bill deals with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. You're voting against this bill, you're voting against to fund the people who will help you in a hurricane and a tornado or a disaster of some sort. Why in the world should they be penalized? So I think we should look at the bill in its totality. We should look at the difficulty of the task that we asked the chairman and the ranking member to do, and we should thank them for the hard work and wisdom that they both exhibited in bringing this product to the floor. Now, I do worry about the rhetoric around this bill. I personally believe, not intentionally, but it's reckless. The encouraging people to believe that we have masses of bad actors in a particular agency, and that some of the rhetoric, and mostly not on this floor, let me say that I have heard in the country about, comparing law enforcement officers to the Gestapo or the Nazis. That's terrible. That's not true. That's not who they are. That's not what they do. And that kind of rhetoric, when we hear it and wherever we hear it from, is dangerous and reckless and wrong. We've had a good debate here today on a variety of bills, and I want to end on a little more positive note. Again, I want to thank my friend, the ranking member. We don't always agree on everything. This bill is probably an example of that. But we work together well and professionally. And it's one of the reasons we can consider this bill separately, is my friend made that request and made it very convincingly to me. And I know she's a person of good faith, and I want to work with her wherever I can. And again, I want to thank her for her friendship and her leadership. We will not agree on this matter today, on this particular item, but there's much, much more that we agree on than we disagree on. And we would not have gotten to this point without working together. But having said that, I do think this is pretty clear, Mr. Speaker. The right thing to do here is to fund the people that protect America, that defend our borders, that help us in times of disaster, and yes, who find criminals who have come into the country illegally, committed crimes, and make sure they're expelled. That makes America safer and better and more secure. And I thank the President and his administration for doing that, and I think we should rally around them and show our support for what they've done by passing this legislation. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.